Christmas morning started like it always did. The smell of cinnamon rolls from my kitchen, the muffled sound of Christmas music leaking from the house next door, and the soft hum of snow falling against the window. I was half watching one of those Hallmark movies on TV while scrolling my phone. Same plot, different actors. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see the neighbor's house. The Cahoe family. The wreath on their door had a big red bow, and the inflatable Santa on their lawn waved his stupid, floppy hand like he was saying, "Merry Christmas, buddy." I only noticed something was off because it was too quiet. No kids shouting. No squeals of excitement. They had 2 boys, Toby and Ryan, 9 and 11. Those kids were always loud. I'd hear them playing basketball in the driveway at 8 a.m., or chasing each other around with Nerf guns. I should have been hearing excited screams and wrapping paper being torn to shreds, but there was nothing. Just that silence. I told myself maybe they were doing a quiet Christmas this year, reading books, playing board games, whatever good families do together. I didn't think much of it until I went to take out the trash around noon. That's when I noticed it. There was something red in the snow near their driveway. Not bright red, but that dark, rusty red you see on old bricks. I figured one of the kids scraped their knee. Or maybe it was ketchup from a tossed Happy Meal. It wasn't a lot, just a streak. But I'm a curious guy, always have been. I followed it. The streak led to the side of the house near their trash bins. The cans were out by the curb, even though trash pickup wasn't until Monday. Odd. But what really made me pause was the bag next to them. A big black trash bag slumped against the side of the can, twisted at the top like someone had cranked it tight. I don't know why, but I stopped and stared at it for a while. It wasn't moving. It wasn't doing anything. But it looked wrong. You know when your brain picks up on something before you can figure out why? Yeah, that. I swear I could smell something too. Not strong, but sharp. Like sickly. I glanced up at the house. Their blinds were down, but I swore I saw something shift. Someone was watching me. I backed off fast, not like I was scared. I just didn't want to seem like a creep poking around their trash. I went back inside, locked the door, and told myself, "None of your business, dude." But that gnawing feeling wouldn't go away. Something was for sure wrong. The police showed up at 3:42 p.m. I remember because I checked the clock like it mattered. 2 cruisers, no sirens, just lights swirling silently on the snow. The whole street watched from their windows. A few neighbors came out, pulling on jackets and slippers, whispering to each other. I didn't go outside. I just stood by my window, phone in hand, pretending I was scrolling. But really, I was watching. 2 officers knocked on their front door. No answer. They knocked harder. One of them radioed something I couldn't hear, and within 2 minutes, another car pulled up. They went in with a battering ram. That bang echoed down the street. 5 minutes later, one of the cops walked back outside and puked into the snow. I felt my heart do this weird flutter, like a misfire. What did he see? The other cop walked out slower, his hand on his belt. Head down, like he didn't want to look at anything but his own boots. He kept shaking his head. I'm not stupid. I knew then. Knew it before the stretchers came, before the medical examiner pulled up in that white van, before I saw 2 officers pulling tiny covered shapes out of the house, carrying them like they weighed nothing. It was 11 p.m. when I remembered the blink camera. I'd installed it last year after someone broke into my car. It faces the street. Catches everything from my front porch to the sidewalk to part of the Kehoe's driveway. It would have seen everything. I sat at my desk, pulled up the app on my phone and clicked playback. I scrolled through hours of footage. For most of it, it was just a boring scene of falling snow and the quiet glow of Christmas lights. Nothing. For hours. Until 12:07 p.m. I felt my stomach twist. It was Mr. Kehoe. He wasn't in his usual winter coat. He was wearing a gray sweatshirt and jeans, sleeves pushed up to his elbows like he'd been working on something messy. His face was weirdly blank. No emotion at all. His eyes had that zombie nobody's home look. I watched him drag that black trash bag toward the bin. He gave it 3 tries to get it up like it was too heavy for him to lift all at once, but in the end, he just gave up. He leaned down and wiped his hands on the snow. slowly, methodically. Then he turned toward the street. For a second, I thought he was looking at me. I leaned back from the screen so hard I nearly fell out of my chair. He was staring right at my house. Then, without breaking eye contact, he raised one hand and waved. Not fast, not a greeting. It was slow, deliberate, like he knew. I paused the video right there, sat in silence for a long time. I could hear the heater kicking on, the faint whistle of wind outside, the distant crunch of snow under boots as an officer walked past my house. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I watched the news. They didn't show much, just a reporter standing in front of the Kehoe's house, her voice low and serious. Words like domestic incident and family tragedy flashed on the screen. No details, no names, just a stock image of police tape flapping in the wind. But I knew. They didn't need to say it. I knew about the bag. I knew what was in it. I knew that wave wasn't just for anyone. It was for me. At 3:16 p.m., I took a deep breath, pulled up the blink footage and watched it one last time. I watched him drag that bag, watched him wipe his hands on the snow. Slowly, deliberately, he raised his hand and waved. But this time I noticed something I missed. It was quick, less than a second. When he dragged the bag, the plastic stretched in a way it hadn't before. The material pulled tight, creasing. And that's when I saw it. Fingers. Small, pale fingers poking through a tear in the bag, curled in like they were mid-scratch. I froze, rewound, played it again. The frame jumped as the camera adjusted focus, but I saw it. 4 small fingers, stiff and unmoving, bent at unnatural angles like they'd been broken and forced into place. I wanted to look away. I didn't. I played it again. I paused it on that frame, stared at it. At 3:47 p.m., I put the blink footage on a flash drive. I didn't delete it. I didn't even rename the file. I just dragged it over and watched the bar fill up. Copy complete. I grabbed my coat, keys, and phone and drove straight to the police station. I didn't call ahead, didn't ask if they needed it. I just walked in, eyes straight ahead like I was on autopilot. I felt that sick, twisty feeling in my gut like I'd done something wrong, even though I knew I hadn't. The officer at the front desk looked up at me like he'd seen this 100 times before. No smile, no welcome. I set the flash drive on the counter and slid it toward him. I didn't say anything at first. I just stood there, fingers pressed flat against the wood. "This might help," I finally said. He didn't say much, just nodded, picked it up, and asked for my name. I gave it to him. I didn't ask for it back. I didn't want it back. I got home, locked every door, and sat by the window, watching the snow pile up on the porch. The trash bin sat at the curb, lids closed tight. I told myself they were empty. I knew they were empty, but I still stared at them. Because sometimes, late at night, I catch myself glancing at the side of my house where the trash bins sit. I know they're empty, but I still check. I still watch. Because sometimes I swear I see something shift, like the edge of the bag crumpling, like a small hand pressing up against the plastic. And sometimes when I'm sitting in the dark with the TV off, I hear a noise outside. Just a soft, dragging sound. Not loud. Barely there. But enough. There's a reason I'll never buy another Christmas tree. Not from a lot. Not from a farm. Not from anywhere. If it's not fake and boxed up in plastic, it's not coming in my house. It's been 2 years, but the guy, that fucking guy, is always in my head. We'd gone to the lot that day like we always did. Me, Karen, and our 2 kids. Ellie, 16, and Todd, 9. I remember how cold it was, my breath fogging up the air in front of me. Todd pulling on my sleeve every 2 seconds saying, "This one, Dad, this one." We wandered around the lot for what felt like an hour. That's when I noticed him. The guy by the fence. He had on a red flannel and jeans, a beanie pulled low on his head. No jacket, no gloves, even though it was freezing. He wasn't helping any customers. Just standing there, leaning against the fence with his hands in his pockets. When I walked past him with Todd, I saw it. He wasn't looking at the trees. He was looking at my Ellie. She was wearing that white puffy coat she loved. The guy didn't blink. His eyes followed her movements like a cat tracking a bird. I should have said something, but I didn't. I just glanced at him. Made that little dad eye contact men do when they want to say, "I see you, don't be weird." He didn't react, just kept looking. I brushed it off. We had trees to look at. When we finally picked one, Todd ran to the little office shack to get the tree guy, as he called him. Out came a guy with a vest, gloves, and a big smile. Not him. Not the guy from the fence. The guy from the fence was still where I'd seen him, leaning back like he hadn't moved an inch. We paid for the tree, and that's when the offer came. "We can deliver it for you," the worker said, grinning through his scarf. "Just jot down your address and we'll have it there tonight." Karen jumped on it. "Oh, that'd be great," she said, glancing at me. "We won't have to tie it to the roof." I hesitated. Something in me didn't like the idea of handing over our address to strangers, but Karen was already writing it down on the clipboard. "It's fine," she said, catching the look on my face. "They do this all the time." She passed the clipboard back, and for a second, I swear I saw him watching. The guy by the fence. His head tilted just a little, like he'd caught something interesting. I felt stupid for thinking it. I told myself, he's just some guy. Relax. The tree showed up at 7:30 that night. Different guy delivered it. Nice guy. He set it up in the stand and even vacuumed the needles off the carpet. I tipped him $20. We decorated it that night. Lights, ornaments, the whole thing. Ellie hung up the angel on top and joked that she was too old for this. But I caught her smiling when she said it. For a few hours, it was perfect. Then came the night it all went wrong. I woke up at 3:42 a.m. to the sound of creaking. Not floorboards, not pipes. It was slower, heavier. I sat up, heart pounding in my ears. Karen was still asleep next to me. For a second I thought, it's Todd. But no, Todd would have called for me or gone straight to the kitchen for water. I didn't move at first, just listened. The air was cold, colder than it should have been. I slipped out of bed, stepped into the hallway. No lights were on. The house was black except for the faint glow of the Christmas tree, flashing red, green, red, green. I stood at the top of the stairs, staring down at the living room. Nothing, just shadows. Too many shadows. I stayed there for a while, holding my breath, ears straining for another sound, and then I went back to bed. I didn't know anything was wrong until Ellie came into our room the next morning. She didn't say anything. She just stood there. Her eyes were red, face pale, and she was shaking like she'd just come in from the cold. "Ellie?" Karen sat up, groggy. "Honey, what's wrong?" Ellie didn't answer. She just shook her head. I'll never forget that. We didn't understand until later. Later, after the police showed up. Later, after I found the window in the kitchen unlocked. The screen bent up like someone had pulled it loose. Later, after Ellie told us with a broken, cracked voice how she'd woken up to a man sitting on the edge of her bed. He'd told her, "Go back to sleep," and she did. It wasn't until she woke up later, fully awake this time, that she saw her closet door was open. It had been closed when she went to bed. The police found fingerprints on the windowsill. They matched them to a man named Dennis Rourke, a seasonal worker, a tree lot employee. It was him. He'd watched us that day, followed the address on the form, watched Ellie through her window. Then he let himself in. They caught him 2 weeks later, sleeping in a car behind a gas station. He had a knife in his backpack. They said he'd done this before, but no one caught him in time. I still think about that night. The creaking sound. The sound I heard but ignored. I think about how I stood at the top of the stairs and didn't move. He was probably just below me. Sometimes I wonder if he was waiting for me to come down. We don't get real trees anymore. I can't walk past one without smelling that sharp pine scent and thinking of him. Ellie doesn't sleep with her door closed anymore. We got cameras installed, floodlights, alarms, everything. None of it feels like enough, because you can't take it back. Once you let someone in, you can't take it back. I still see guys like him, at the grocery store, in parking lots, leaning against fences, hands in their pockets, watching. I always watch back now, and I know they see me too. I know they see me. It was supposed to be perfect. I'd seen the videos online, kids opening gift boxes with tiny air holes, pulling out sleepy little kittens with big eyes and soft meows. They'd gasp, faces lit with surprise and joy. I wanted that moment for my kids. I wanted them to remember it forever. So, yeah, I bought the cat. I found her through one of those rehoming fee posts online. The woman met me in the parking lot of a grocery store just after dusk. Her car's headlights were off, but I could see her silhouette in the driver's seat, just sitting there, watching me approach. She only opened the window a crack, just enough to pass me the box. Not even a hello. The box wasn't much bigger than a shoebox, and it had soft scrapes on the sides like something had tried to get out. I should have noticed that. I should have asked. "Here she is," the woman said, her voice flat. Her eyes flicked toward me, then back to her dashboard, fingers tapping the wheel in slow, steady clicks. The box moved in my hands, a sudden little jolt, like a hiccup. I almost dropped it. "She's calm," the woman said. "Used to being handled. She'll probably sleep the whole way home." I nodded, not really thinking about it. The box shifted again, and I glanced at the air holes. They were small. Too small? No, it's fine, I thought. Kittens are small. Kittens breathe just fine. I should have opened it. I should have looked, but I didn't. Christmas morning was chaos. The kids were wild. Wrapping paper flying, ribbons tangled in their hair, half-opened boxes littering the floor. Nick was tearing into a box with his new Hot Wheels set while Caroline had her headphones on, already scrolling through music. Alice was in the kitchen cooking, and I was on cup number 3 of coffee, letting the noise swirl around me like a storm. I waited until the gifts were almost done before I brought it out. The special one. The box with the big red bow. The moment. I carried it into the living room slowly, making sure they saw it before I spoke. Their heads whipped around like dogs hearing a whistle. Nick dropped the Hot Wheels track, eyes wide. Caroline yanked off her headphones. Both of them scrambled over like they were starving, and I'd brought dinner. The box was moving. I swear it was moving. I set it down on the carpet and stepped back, my heart doing this little fluttery beat in my chest. I was nervous. Stupid, right? But something about it felt off. Caroline untied the ribbon while Nick ripped off the lid. The room went quiet. I watched their faces, excited for their reaction. But Caroline didn't scream. She didn't gasp. She just froze. Her eyes locked on the box, her head tilting to the side like a dog trying to understand a noise. Nick leaned in, squinting like he couldn't quite see it right. He reached down and poked it. Not rough. Just a little nudge. "She's not moving," he mumbled, his voice barely a whisper. I felt something cold crawl up the back of my neck. "Maybe she's tired," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. It came out too fast. I could hear it. Too fast, too tight. "She's probably sleeping." Nick pressed his finger into the kitten's side. This time his hand lingered longer. His eyes lifted to mine, round and confused. "Mom," he said, his little voice cracking. "She's not breathing." I moved fast. I crouched down, yanked the lid back on the box, and pressed my hand on top of it like I could push away the problem. "She's fine," I said. "She's just sleeping." Sometimes cats sleep real deep. Leave her alone. Let her rest. Nick blinked up at me, his lips pressed into a thin line. Caroline didn't say a word, but her eyes stayed on me, dark and narrow. She knew. She knew I was lying. I carried it to the garage while they opened their other gifts. The box felt heavier this time. The house smelled like burnt sugar and pine needles. It was 10:47 p.m. I remember the time because I kept staring at the oven clock while standing in the garage. The lights were off except for the glow from the kitchen. The box was on the workbench. I stared at it for a while, didn't move, didn't even breathe. Just watched it like it might watch me back. I untied the ribbon slowly, pulled the lid off. There she was. Her little paws were up against the inside wall of the box. One claw was caught in the cardboard, bent back so far it looked broken. Her face was twisted, eyes half open, lips peeled back, teeth bared like she'd died, fighting something I couldn't see. Her tongue was poking out just a little, curled at the tip. Her back was bent wrong, her head tilted too far to the side. I felt like I was going to be sick. I didn't touch her. I pressed the lid back on slowly. Like if I moved too fast, it would snap back open. My fingers were shaking. I stood there for maybe 20 minutes, listening to the hum of the dryer, the faint buzz of Christmas lights in the next room. My heart wasn't beating right. It felt slow, heavy, like every thud echoed through my chest. I knew what I had to do. The next day, I drove 45 minutes out of town to a shelter. I told them I needed a gray tabby, as close as they had. The lady at the front desk smiled, said, "Oh, we have one just like that. You'll love her." She was wrong. I didn't love her. I didn't feel anything for her. She was smaller, her stripes a little darker, but close enough. Close enough for Nick, close enough for Caroline. Kids don't notice that stuff. When I got home, I let the new cat loose in the living room. She darted under the couch, her little eyes flicking back and forth, tracking every shadow. "Mom, she's awake!" Nick shouted, his voice high with excitement. He crawled on his hands and knees, trying to see under the couch. Caroline walked slower, arms crossed, eyes locked on the cat. Her gaze flicked to me, then to the cat, then back to me. "She's not the same," Caroline said. Her voice was quiet. "She is," I said quickly. "Same cat. She just needed some time to rest, that's all." Caroline stared at me like I'd told her the sky was green. She didn't look angry. She didn't even look upset. She just watched me. Her eyes dropped to the cat. "Her paws are different," she said softly. Her eyes didn't move from the cat's feet. I felt my heart stop for half a beat. "What?" I said, too fast. Caroline's eyes flicked back up to mine, sharp and clear like she'd solved a puzzle. "The other one had white paws," she said. "This one doesn't." My whole body went cold. I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. "Mom?" she said, her voice quiet. But there was something else in it now. "Where's the other one?" I smiled. I smiled so big it hurt. "She's right here, honey," I said, gesturing to the new cat, my voice too bright. "You're just imagining it. This is her. This is Mittens." Caroline didn't say anything. She just scanned me. Kids notice everything. They see what you don't want them to see. I'm not lying, but as I lay in bed, eyes closed tight, I could hear it. The soft scratch, scratch, scratch of claws on cardboard. Real or not, I heard it. And I still hear it.